at 09:12 p.m., December 28, 2025. As the whole world was joyfully counting down the last days of the year, a Ukrainian drone flew through a billion-dollar air defense system and landed at the most strategic Tu-160 factory. Soon, the Russians will regret their decision to reject peace. The Kremlin has a grim New Year's resolution to utilize their strategic bomber fleet to plunge every Ukrainian city into total darkness and freezing cold before the ball drops. But tonight, Kyiv is voting no on that resolution. Instead of waiting for the missiles to arrive, Ukraine has sent the fight more than 620 miles deep into the heart of the Russian Federation. Ukraine's target is the Gorbunov Kazan Aviation plant, the only facility on Earth capable of building and upgrading the Tu-160M Blackjack. These are the White Swans, 606,000-pound monsters that cost $270 million apiece and are designed to carry 12 nuclear cruise missiles. Basically, a swarm of cheap Ukrainian Hornets has flown hundreds of miles to deliver a very late, very explosive Christmas present to the factory that builds Putin's most expensive toys. The stakes tonight are astronomical. If this swarm gets through, it won't just destroy a few planes, it will cripple Russia's ability to wage strategic war for years. Now, put yourself in the commander's seat. You have 20 drones and one shot at the most heavily defended factory in Russia. Do you spend your swarm attacking the hangars to destroy the airframes, or do you target the fuel infrastructure to burn the whole facility down? Pause the comment on your strategy below. 08:30 p.m. The journey to Kazan is a masterclass in what military pilots call terrain masking. The swarm of Liutyi drones drops to the deck, skimming the frozen surface of the Volga River like a high-speed bobsled team. Through the vibrating FPV feed, the operator watches a massive steel railway bridge flash past just 60 feet below the wings. The margin for error is non-existent. In the quiet control room, he whispers a command to the machine. Hold altitude. Steady. The onboard AI is doing the heavy lifting here. Moving at a steady 220 miles per hour, the autopilot micro-adjusts the flight path to weave around power lines and riverside transmission towers. They are maintaining a suicidal altitude of between 80 and 120 feet. Here is the physics of the gamble. The Russian S-350 Vityaz air defense system is stationed 150 miles away, scanning the heavens for high-altitude threats. But because of the curvature of the Earth, these drones are flying in a radar shadow so deep that the laws of physics literally hide them from detection. To put it in perspective, they are flying so low that if a Russian salmon jumped a little higher than usual, it would probably take out a propeller. 10:42 p.m. The first phase of the Ukrainian plan executes with clockwork precision. A wave of 6 decoy Liutyi drones suddenly pitches up, climbing rapidly from the riverbed to an altitude of 8,000 feet. They are screaming their presence to the world, practically begging to be shot. To the radar operators of the S-350 Vityaz battery on the outskirts of Kazan, this looks like the main attack. Contacts: 6 targets, inbound vector southwest. The command is given instantly. 4 9M96E2 hypersonic missiles roar into the night sky, their rocket motors turning the pitch-black Volga into noonday brightness. Simultaneously, 2 Tor M2 batteries hidden in the riverside forest activate their engagement radars. They launch a volley of 9M331 interceptors. The sky erupts in a series of flashes as 3 of the decoys are obliterated. Inside the Panzer S1 vehicle guarding the factory walls, the radio crackles with triumph. First wave cleared! Reloading canisters! The Russian crew is high-fiving. They believe they have just repelled a major strike. They think the danger is over. This is a textbook example of dramatic irony. While the Russians are celebrating and beginning the slow process of reloading their launchers, they have no idea that the real swarm of 15 fully loaded drones is still down on the deck, gliding silently over the ice just 12 miles away. The Russians didn't just waste millions of dollars in missiles, they just told the Ukrainian operator exactly where their hidden air defense batteries are located. The shark isn't dead, it's just swimming in the blind spot. 10:45 p.m. The real threat arrives at the strategic confluence where the Kazanka River meets the Volga. This wide, flat expanse of frozen water offers the perfect invisible highway for the main swarm of 15 live Liutyi drones. Through the high-definition FPV feed, the Ukrainian operator's heart skips a beat. A rusted, abandoned fishing trawler looms out of the darkness, frozen into the ice. With milliseconds to react, the lead drone banks hard, clearing the vessel's mast by a terrifying margin of just 40 feet. The operator exhales sharply, his knuckles white on the controls. He glances at the threat monitor. The Russian Pantsir S-1 is still scanning the heavens, its radar dish tilted upward, searching for high-altitude ghosts that no longer exist. Inside the Tor M2 command vehicle near the riverbank, the Russian operator scratches the back of his neck. It's that primal instinct, the phantom itch of a soldier who knows something is wrong even when his instruments say everything is fine. "It's too quiet," he mutters, tapping the glass of his radar scope. "We just cleared the sky, so why does it feel like we're being watched?" He can't see them because of a brutal geometric reality. The high banks of the river are acting like canyon walls, blocking the line of sight for the Russian ground-based radar. The swarm is flying deep in the ground clutter, hiding in the electronic noise of the river itself. To the Russian defense grid, these drones aren't aircraft, they are just phantom signals merging with the ice. The swarm has successfully infiltrated the perimeter, and the white swans are now sitting ducks. 10:48 p.m., the invisible highway suddenly hits a massive roadblock. Deep inside Kazan, the Russian commanders finally realize that the decoy attack was just the opening jab. In a panic, they activate the full power of their electronic warfare EW suite. It's like someone turned on a giant microwave oven over the entire city. On the Ukrainian operator screen, the telemetry data goes haywire. The GPS signal drops to 0. The radio control link dissolves into aggressive white noise. 4 of the Liutyi drones, blinded and confused by the electronic fog, veer sharply off course. They slam into the dense pine forests along the riverbank, turning into balls of fire in the snow. Things get worse. A mobile Pantsir S-1 unit patrolling the perimeter of the factory receives an emergency order. "Scan low! They are on the deck!" The radar dish tilts down, sweeping the river surface. It catches a faint glint of movement against the ice. 2 57E6 missiles streak out of the tubes. One of the Liutyi drones tries to jink, but the proximity fuse catches it. Boom! A fireball erupts over the Volga. The swarm is fracturing, the jamming is blinding them, the missiles are hunting them, it looks like the mission is scrubbing out. But this is the moment the Ukrainian operator plays the ace card. He screams into his headset, "Engage fiber mode, now!" High above the river, a mother drone, which has been loitering unnoticed 30 miles back, activates the Volga fiber switch. It drops a payload that spools out miles of ultra-thin, military-grade fiber optic cable, effectively creating a hardwired data link that trails in the air currents like a spider web. The remaining drones in the swarm latch onto this relayed signal. In a split second, the FPV feed on the operator's screen snaps from snowy static to crystal-clear 4K resolution. It is a moment of pure technological mockery. The Russians are pumping megawatts of jamming energy into the air, thinking they have cut the head off the snake. They assume the drones are blind. But Ukraine isn't using radio waves anymore. They are fishing in the Volga with a light-speed cable that is physically impossible to jam. Inside the Ukrainian control room, the operator wipes sweat from his eyes, his hands flying across the console. "We are back online, signal is 100%. Meanwhile, inside the Russian Pantsir vehicle, the commander is screaming into his radio, his voice cracking with panic. "New targets, multiple vectors from the river, they are still maneuvering, how do they still have a signal?" He desperately yells for a reload, but physics is a cruel mistress. The drones are now moving with the precision of a surgeon, and the Russian defense grid is staring at a ghost that refuses to die. 10:50 p.m. The surviving 11 Liutyi drones rise from the riverbank like a swarm of angry wasps. They are now inside the perimeter. On the operator's fiber-linked screen, the target finally reveals itself in terrifying detail. The massive main assembly hangar of the Gorbunov plant looms out of the industrial smog. Through the high bay windows, illuminated by the facility's own security lights, the skeletal titanium shapes of 3 Tu-160M airframes are clearly visible. There they are, the white swans sitting in their nest, half-built and completely helpless. The Russian defense disintegrates into chaotic violence. The Pantsir S-1 crew, realizing their missiles are useless at this point-blank range, switches to their dual 30mm autocannons. The guns roar to life, spitting 12,500 rounds per minute. It sounds like a giant chainsaw ripping through the sky. Tracers streak through the night, creating a wall of lead and fire. 3 of the Ukrainian drones are shredded instantly, their composite wings disintegrating into confetti under the heavy caliber impact. On the ground, Russian security forces abandon their posts. They are sprinting for the concrete bunkers, diving for cover as the air fills with the whine of diving engines. It is total panic. In the control room in Ukraine, the mood shifts from tension to cold resolve. The operator ignores the chaos on the screen. He isn't fighting the defense anymore. He is lining up the kill shot. The countdown clock hits the red zone. 30 seconds. The target fills the entire field of view. The operator's hand relaxes on the joystick. A grim smile spreads across his face as he whispers the final command into his microphone. Lock confirmed. Gift delivered. The first wave of 4 Liutyi drones peels off from the main pack with a singular destructive purpose. They aren't aiming for the hangars yet. They are aiming for the facility's lifeblood. They slam directly into the massive aviation fuel storage tanks on the south side of the complex. The 440-pound warheads detonate instantly, rupturing the pressurized vessels. Millions of gallons of Jet A1 fuel ignite in a split second, sending a fireball 2,000 feet into the night sky. It turns the frozen banks of the Volga into a blinding man-made sunrise. This isn't just an explosion, it is a thermal weapon. The sheer intensity of the heat instantly overloads the infrared sensors of every remaining Russian Panzer unit in the district, effectively blinding the defense grid with a wall of white-hot noise. With the defenders staring into the sun, the remaining 7 drones execute the primary mission. They dive straight for the main assembly hangar, but they don't hit the reinforced walls. That would be amateur hour. They punch directly through the corrugated steel roof. Here's the genius of the engineering. The fuses are set with a 0.5-second delay. They don't explode on contact with the roof. They wait until they are inside the room. The physics inside the hangar become catastrophic. The blast waves trapped within the concrete walls have nowhere to go but through the fragile, half-built airframes. The first shockwave hammers airframe number 804, a Tu-160M nearing 80% completion. The titanium skin, designed to withstand supersonic flight, crumples like a soda can under the immense overpressure. The second and third drones detonate directly over the tooling jigs holding the NK-32 engines. These aren't just engines, they are the most complex, expensive pieces of aerospace engineering in Russia. In a millisecond, high-velocity shrapnel shreds the compressor blades, turning tens of millions of dollars of precision machinery into a pile of jagged scrap metal. The hangar transforms into a blast furnace, and the internal scaffolding collapses, burying the white swans in a tomb of twisted steel and burning insulation. As the smoke clears on the morning of December 29th, the satellite imagery confirms the scale of the financial massacre. The Gorbunov plant is a smoking ruin. The roof of the main hangar has collapsed inward and the fuel depot is still burning. That is a total loss of nearly $1 billion for the Kremlin. The return on investment sits at a staggering 50,000%. There isn't a stock on Wall Street, a crypto coin, or a hedge fund in Silicon Valley that can compete with the efficiency of a Ukrainian drone swarm. The strategic fallout goes far beyond the money. The Tu-160M program was Putin's pride, the symbol of Russia's ability to project nuclear power. By destroying the factory itself, Ukraine didn't just break a few planes, they broke the supply chain. Russia's ability to modernize its bomber fleet has just been set back by at least 5 years. Russia wanted to freeze Ukraine for the new year. Instead, Ukraine flew 600 miles into the safe zone, skated down the Volga River, and burned down the most secure factory in the Federation. Back in the control room, the young Ukrainian operator leans back in his chair, the adrenaline finally fading into exhaustion. He watches the replay of the hangar roof collapsing, a grim smile spreading across his face. "Gift delivered," he whispers. "Happy New Year, Moscow." The lesson for 2026 is written in the ashes of Kazan. Don't brag about your red lines and your impenetrable air defense when your enemy is smart enough to turn a frozen river into a superhighway and a spool of fishing line into a weapon of mass destruction. Now, I have a question for you. Russia will inevitably try to retaliate, but their strategic bomber fleet is now threatened at the source. If you were the Russian commander, would you pull the remaining bombers back to the Arctic, effectively removing them from the daily fight, or keep them close and risk another swarm? Let me know your strategy in the comments below. And if you enjoyed seeing $1 billion of tyranny go up in smoke, smash that like button. Slava Ukraini!